Hey, I'm Emma Garlett, and on today's episode of Paint It Black, I'll be giving you my take on the recent announcement by the Federal Nationals that they won't be supporting a voice to Parliament. Plus, I'll be talking about who should be heard in a voice to Parliament and why. Despite our First Nations people being the oldest continuous culture in the world, Australia is lagging far behind other countries when it comes to representation. Over the coming weeks, I'll be releasing a video which will explain the voice to Parliament and how it fits into the Uluru Statement from the Heart. So stay tuned for that. But for now, join me as I paint it black. Okay, so this one is controversial, so buckle up and get ready for a ride. This week, the Nationals announced they will not be supporting a voice to Parliament. The federal arm of the party said they wouldn't support an Indigenous voice in Australia's Parliament because they said it fails to reflect the immediate needs of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and would create further division around the country, and that a voice wouldn't close the gap.
We have to stop dividing our nation along the lines of race.
Nationals leader David Littleproud and Senator Jacinta Price said there wasn't enough detail in the federal government's proposal for them to support it. But this week, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese questioned that.
It is 280 pages of detail. 280 pages of detail about how the voice will operate.
And I would like to say that before making comments like the Nationals have, to actually speak to the community to see if they want it, and by the looks of it, the community does. This isn't something flippantly mentioned just a couple of days ago. The Uluru Statement from the Heart was presented in 2017 and was a result of 6 months of intense talks by people in the First Nations community and has been something that's been talked about for decades. I think Indigenous Australians Minister Linda Burney sums it up perfectly why we need it.
That someone with my history can stand in this place is the most unlikely thing. But not everyone is so lucky. Not everyone can have their voice heard, and that's why we need a voice.
The Nationals say having an Indigenous voice in Parliament won't shift the dial for Aboriginal communities in Australia. They are wrong. So what's the problem then? At least First Nations people will be heard instead of being told how they feel by someone outside of the community. Being heard is the first step towards positive change and closing the gap. I wonder if they'd be okay with someone who doesn't know anything about who they are making decisions for them without asking what they want. Because let's get this straight, whatever the Nats say is their reason for opposing it, that's exactly what's happening. But the WA Nationals have been quick to distance themselves from that stance, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has stressed that an enshrined voice and adoption of the Uluru Statement from the Heart is an outstretched hand for reconciliation. With that in mind, I want to get you thinking, who should be on the Voice to Parliament? The Voice to Parliament is a proposed body enshrined in the Constitution which will provide non-binding advice to Parliament on policies which affect First Nations peoples. So who would be best to represent us? The needs of Geraldton are different to the needs of Beagle Bay, and the needs of Burungurra are different again. No two communities are the same. The Voice to Parliament should be made up of our community members themselves. It is my view that First Nations university professors, public figures, business executives, or people like me who already have a platform should not be a part of the Voice to Parliament. We all already have the capacity, resources and influence in our roles to meet with and provide submissions to government on issues which affect First Nations people. I argue that the Voice to Parliament must consist of our family elders, our grassroots community leaders, our knowledge holders, our cultural custodians, our First Nations teachers, our Indigenous psychologists, our traditional healers, and most importantly, our youth, who are our future. Our First Nations youth must not be forgotten. We need to include them in this process and guide them as we hand back the baton to continue the work of our elders. There is a level of succession planning required, especially as more than 53% of First Nations people in Australia are under 25 years old. In the words of Dr. Jackie Huggins, It is a very Aboriginal thing to do to give younger people greater responsibilities within the community as they become able to take on those responsibilities. It is a culturally appropriate transfer of roles that involves respect in both directions, from the younger to the older and the older to the younger. The Voice to Parliament presents an opportunity for our youth to speak for themselves. It is a big job, and there are some large issues which needs to be tackled, such as deaths in custody, high Indigenous incarceration rates, high rates of Indigenous suicide, children in out-of-home care, access to health services and access to education. The best people to provide this advice are those in our communities. No one will solve community problems but the community themselves. We need to facilitate diversity of thought, people and leadership. We need to get the governance right to ensure any action we take is sustainable. Thanks for watching Paint It Black with me, Emma Garlett. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Have a good one.